National Shooting Sports Foundation owns the SHOT Show. This is the 41st SHOT Show. This is the 21st time we've been in Las Vegas, and we will be here in Vegas for the foreseeable future for quite a number of years, as we actually anticipate growing and expanding the show in the next 2 years.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah,
that's
we're
impressive. How big is it now?
Well, right now we're just under 700,000 square feet of net exhibit space. There's about 2,400 exhibitors, and we bring in about 60,000 exhibitors and attendees. We have foreign military, foreign law enforcement, U.S. military, U.S. law enforcement. You know, we have all branches of the military. We have, you know, people trolling around the floor looking for new things, from special ops. You know, they have their own budgets, and then you have, you know, literally tens of thousands of firearms retailers and buyers from all over the country, looking for new products, for deals on, you know, for their shop.
Right?
That's the main.
It's a trade show.
It's a trade show. It's a B2B trade show. So our, you know, primary target attendee is a buyer or a retailer, you know, and so it's very successful. Obviously, it allows NSSF to do things like, you know, Project Child Save, our new program with ATF, Operation Secure Store. We're working with ATF to reduce the number of burglaries and the theft of guns from burglars of gun stores. We offer matching rewards, helping raise awareness among the dealer community to take appropriate steps to make their inventory more secure and less likely to be a victim of a burglary. We do that. Our long-standing initiative with ATF called Don't Lie for the Other Guy to prevent illegal straw purchasing. And, you know, we have the show you see and the exhibits and people looking at products. But what you also have to realize is we have a very extensive array of seminars, educational seminars that go on, where retailers are meeting with regulatory agencies to learn about compliance, to learn about how to be a better marketer, how to do, you know, run their store better, how to raise, you know, their margins and be more profitable. And all of that's going on here. We have law enforcement training that goes on for law enforcement community that comes to the show, because they're out there looking for products that they need to buy for, you know, for their purposes. So it's an enormous event. You know, if you went and visited every single exhibitor at the show in the course of the 4 days, you could spend about 14 seconds with each one to be able to go to all of them. So it's massive. Yeah,
it is huge. And then at the same time, even though it's mainly a trade show and you've got a lot of you know, wholesalers and retailers coming here to look at the latest and send in purchase orders, it's also, I think, fair to say that there's a political aspect to it as well. There's a lot of gun rights activists that come to the show from all sorts of different organizations, and then there's also the initiatives that NSSF itself does, right? As you mentioned, there's Child Safe, you know, to make sure you lock your guns up to keep children from accessing them when they're not supposed to, right? You mentioned the Safe Store, and then there's also several other ones as well, like you've got your suicide prevention.
Right, we have people from that group here has a booth, giving educational material to retailers and ranges to raise awareness, how they might be able to try to identify potentially suicidal individuals, and how to handle it.
Right? Most gun deaths are suicides.
So 2/3 of all gun deaths are suicides. 50% of all suicides involve a firearm, and about 85% of attempted suicides involving a firearm are successful. So this the largest suicide prevention organization in the country, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, approached NSSF and said, we want to partner with you guys, work together to try to raise awareness. They have a goal we're trying to help them achieve of reducing suicides by 20% by 2025, and it's a big challenge because unfortunately, you know, the rates of suicides are increasing as the population ages. So, but we are working with them. You know, it's a national campaign. We're rolling it out all across the country. Give information.
So the industry's aware of the problem, and you're proactively trying to
exactly because look, you know, despite what you hear from anti-gun groups, this is a responsible industry. People care very much about preventing, you know, the unauthorized access to firearms of any kind at any time by individuals who can't be trusted to use them safely. Whether that's a criminal, a gangbanger, whether it's someone who's suicidal, or whether it's a child finding a firearm, a loaded firearm in the home, left, you know, not secured properly. You know, we don't want to see these events occur And so we're about real solutions that address these problems, not about things that are not going to affect or reduce crime or improve or make our community safer, like Senator Feinstein's assault weapons bill, which goes even further than past bills she's introduced, or even bills to mandate smart gun technology and things like that. And we're going to see a lot of gun control legislation coming out of the House. We're already starting to see it. Now that the Democrats are taking control. It's not that all Democrats are anti-gun, but the leadership of the Democratic Party at the national level clearly is, and we just have to look at the bills they're introducing and how they ran on gun control. But the interesting thing is, while the House got in the control of anti-gun Democrats, the Senate actually got more pro-gun. So we still have the Senate that understands and appreciates the Second Amendment. So we'll have to fight these battles in the House, but we'll also hopefully be able to stop any of these bad bills from becoming law in the Senate. So.
Yeah, and certainly that's another aspect of what NSSF does, right? There's also your efforts at stopping bad legislation and promoting hunter positive legislation.
Right.
Because you guys are essentially you're out there trying to protect the right to commerce.
Right. Well, so we're the Industry Trade Association. Mm-hmm. So our members are all manufacturers, distributors, retailers of firearms, ammunition, and as we like to say, anything you can put in, on, around, or through a gun, right, for use for target shooting, hunting, tactical market. And our mission is to promote and protect hunting and shooting sports. We're very concerned about protecting our firearms freedoms because, if you don't have a Second Amendment, you don't have the right to hunt. You don't have, the heritage of target shooting in this country goes away. So, we have all these programs we do to encourage participation in hunting and the shooting sports. Yeah. But we also have all these programs that we do to, as a safe, responsible industry to promote real solutions to reduce the criminal misuse of firearms or the accidents involving firearms, and we've talked about many of those programs. Sure. And then we have a government relations and public affairs program where we try to get the industry's message out to the public about these programs, that how we are a responsible industry, and we care deeply about making our communities safer, and that our job is to represent the industry's interests in Capitol Hill and state capitals to prevent bad policies from being enacted into law that will hurt our industry members, make it harder for them to engage in the lawful, constitutionally protected commerce in firearms and ammunition products, and will not make our communities safer. So, and will infringe upon the Second Amendment. So that's what NSSF is all about, and the SHOT Show is a critically important part of helping us to do all of those missions.
Going off of that, there's the financial industry. We've seen a lot of consternation there between some of the bigger banks and the firearms industry lately, right? With some of the actions that Citibank, Bank of America have taken, and some that have been urging that industry to go even further. The New York Times had a columnist who basically said the credit card companies should track and maybe even ban gun purchases. Yeah. What are you guys seeing as the representative of the firearms industry with all that? Because to me that seems like one of the biggest stories right now as far as gun freedoms go, is what's going on with the finance. There might not be legislation that's forcing them to do this, but it's possible that you could see the industry as a whole, or at least the majority of them, take stances against otherwise legal firearms that they don't like for their own personal reasons or whatever.
Yeah, we are very concerned about that.
Yeah, what are you seeing
and so we're tracking that very closely. We're working with allies on the Hill who understand the risks that it presents to the industry, and trying to make sure other banks don't follow Bank of America or Citigroup down that rabbit hole. We're concerned about credit card processors refusing to process lawful transactions, but legal, regulated commerce. They tell us it's the banks say it's the credit card processors. But we're working very closely with Chairman Crapo, who's the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. We saw legislation introduced last year by Senator Kennedy, the No Red Bank, Blue Bank bill that says you basically, you can't discriminate against lawful businesses and expect, to have the support of the federal government, like and working with a couple of senators to get more legislation introduced to stop this from happening. But we're also concerned about this corporate shaming, we call it, or boardroom legislation, and this article by this anti-gun reporter or editorialist from CNBC suggesting that the banks should, or credit card processors should somehow regulate every transaction and deny lawful transactions is really troubling. I don't think we're concerned about it, but the reaction we've seen from the credit card companies is we're not going to get involved in that. I mean, where does it stop? You're going to stop people from buying certain books, or certain, if they use a credit card to buy alcohol, or if they use a credit card to buy fast food. When where does it end, right? The social justice warriors will just keep trying to expand the scope and put pressure on these institutions, to adopt these un-American, undemocratic policies. It's not the role of the banks to do this. Unfortunately, a number of the companies have said that. We're very encouraged by Wells Fargo, for example. When Bank of America, which was led by a member of the bank, the vice chairman of the bank, a woman by the name of Ann Finucane out of Boston, who's married to Mike Barnacle, the Boston Globe reporter, who you see on Morning Joe on MSNBC every morning. And Citigroup, which is, we understand, led by a board member who happens to be the girlfriend of Michael Bloomberg. But other banks have said we're not going down that rabbit hole. That's not our job. That's for the legislature to make those policy choices. So, but we are very concerned about the corporate shaming we see, or the censorship we see on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. And it's not just our industry. We see that with a lot of conservative voices being suppressed and censored by these social media sites. And we think you're probably going to see legislation introduced to address that issue going forward. And you're actually going to see some Democrats supporting that, because they're, as you've seen in the hearings in Congress, they're very concerned about, some of the policies that, and privacy issues that have come up with, like Google and Facebook. And so, we're monitoring that very closely as well.
Okay, and going off of that, I guess there's also a general concern as well, I think, among gun owners about the gun companies or retailers themselves falling into the same sort of pattern of trying to restrict their own practices based off of pressure from outside groups, which we've seen, in the past. We saw that with Smith & Wesson in the 90s. Obviously, they changed course on that, but we've even seen it with, Dick's Sporting Goods, which is a major firearms retailer, and what they've lately have essentially, on their own accord said we're not going to sell these certain guns. Like, do you think that's a trend that's something that people should worry about with the industry at large, firearms industry?
I don't. So you saw that in the case of very large, what we call corporate retailers. And I think in the case of Dick's, where we said, and Walmart, we says, look, they're free to make their own policy choices, and consumers will make their own purchasing choices. And it's not, what happens is, Dick's decides we're not going to sell these products. Well, consumers still want those products. They're still legal to buy for lawful purposes. So they'll just go to other retailers and buy them there. So I don't know what they think they're accomplishing. It's not making our communities any safer, but they are knuckling under to pressure from these, social justice warriors and gun control groups. Our issue with Dick's became when they hired a lobbying firm to go out there and advocate, not just that it be their policy choice for their company, but try to voice their policy choices as law on the entire industry. And I don't think you're going to see other retailers following, what Dick's did. And you've seen it's hurt Dick's financially. They've paid a price. They've lost sales. And again, those sales have gone to other retailers. And there's some discussion going on now, as we've seen in the financial press, that Dick's may be getting out of the category entirely. And I've heard some people say they think that was always where Dick's was headed, and that this was just a way to get there faster.
You guys essentially disinvited Dick's to SHOT Show after this happened.
Well, the board took action to remove them from membership in the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Not because of the policy choice they made on their own for their company, but because they hired a lobbying firm to try to impose that policy choice on the entire industry, which was, contrary to the best interest of the foundation.
Right, and if there were other companies that decided to take a similar path in regards to lobbying for stricter gun control.
Well, we case by case basis. We have not seen that. We're not seeing that, and I don't expect that we will see that.
Okay, and so since we're here in the middle of everything, what do you think what's your big takeaway from this event? What is the thing that that really strikes you about SHOT Show now in 2019? And several decades into it,
we're very unique to be a trade show that's 41 years old and still growing. That is very unique in the trade show business. The energy that people have, the relationships that are forged here or renewed here between the attendees and exhibitors, among industry members at various social functions in the evening. And the support for NSSF that we receive from everybody here for the mission that we have to promote and protect hunting and shooting sports, our safety campaigns, our crime prevention campaigns that we do with ATF, and our government relations efforts. We had a packed reception last evening with Mark Robinson from Greenville, South Carolina, who is his video of his testimony before that city council went viral with over 100 million views. He was our speaker, and he was outstanding. A lot of energy. So we hear a lot, in the mainstream media about, the so-called Trump slump, or how the industry's in the doldrums and the sky is falling and all of this. And I keep reminding, when I talk to mainstream media, that yes, are we down from the peaks of 2016? Yes. But if you look at where we are now versus where we were like in 2008 or 9, I mean, if you told somebody in the industry at SHOT Show, if I could put you in Mr. Peabody's time machine and bring you back to 2008 and say, in 2019, this is where you're going to be on your sales, they would have said, that's fantastic, right? So yeah, we're down. I say often, we're off the peaks, but the valley floor is much higher.
Do you expect
we see
sales
growth
to come back
we
Democrats in control? You think that's going to be a driving
I
force?
think that it can be, depends on what they do.
Yeah.
I certainly think, looking at all of the Democrats that have put their hat in the ring already for 2020, and how anti-gun they are. I mean, Kamala Harris, Gillibrand, Senator Warren. I mean, Joe Biden's talking about it.
Yep.
Spartacus is talking about it. I mean, so, I don't see any Democrats that are mentioned as being, considering running. Beto O'Rourke, he's talking about it. He's in favor of banning guns. So I think that as we get closer to 2020 and the race crystallizes, I think you'll see people react to the concern that the Democrats are going to try to ban the guns and diminish your Second Amendment rights. So I think that's likely to happen. But I think we will continue to see growth. We see more and more women purchasing firearms for self-protection, target shooting, and hunting. We see more minorities. I mean, the face of the customer is changing. It's much different. I mean, it's the stereotype that the only people who buy guns are old white guys from the South or something is just, not true. So we, the industry is in a good place, and we'll be fine. And people have been writing the demise of the firearms industry for a real long time. And here we are, 60,000 people strong, and the show is growing.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking
Thanks for
time
coming
to
by.
speak with us here on the floor.
Yeah, thank you.
And we've got more coming to you, so make sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, my Twitter. We got lots more content coming, so stay tuned.